That Whitefeather and Lantz kept one security camera in the shed with the two teens and kept the other one in an upstairs room. This is where a 9-year-old and 11-year-old stayed with no furniture, with just a tarp. The video is giving us a glimpse of their daily routine during this time period that started with them waking up at 4:30 in the morning after sleeping on the floor. In the shed, the two teens would hold up a sheet for each other while the other used the camper toilet. The rest of their days spent mostly in those rooms standing. At one point, when one of the teens sits down, Whitefeather then comes over the intercom on the camera and she stands back up. You also hear the younger kids ask for permission to leave the room to use the bathroom and brush their teeth. We've learned that the boy in the shed has several mental health disorders, as Detective Anna Pyle with the Kanawha County Sheriff's Office testified that the girl in there with him served as his babysitter. This is her on the stand describing their sleeping conditions.
That the children in both rooms slept on the floor. The two in the barn area slept on the concrete floor with sleeping on a sleeping bag on the concrete floor, and slept with nothing underneath him other than a piece of cardboard under his head, and had a fitted sheet that he would cover up with. And in the bedroom upstairs, they would sleep on that plastic that I had mentioned, but they did have some blankets that they would cover up with.
Now, in terms of food in the videos, we see the kids given what's believed to be peanut butter sandwiches during the day, but very limited things to drink, if anything. At one point, Lantz tells the younger kids that if they don't finish the sandwich, they won't get anything for the rest of the day. Now,
and instead of apologizing today, because you never have said you're sorry, even though, Miss Whitefeather, you say you made some mistakes, but you're not sorry for them. And Mr. Lantz, I didn't hear you apologize either when you had the opportunity. But what you did do was put on one of the most reprehensible, narcissistic defenses that I have ever seen in my years of trial work.
Defense attorney Mark Lantz, who represents Whitefeather, said throughout the trial and even now she still denies any criminal responsibility.
My client's side of the story hasn't changed. It really has been that they did the best they could under the circumstances and they didn't intentionally harm anybody. So I'm not surprised that they spoke their hearts, even though a lot of people disagree with it. That's their story, and that's what they've told.
The good in this is the people that took action here in the state of West Virginia. The good in this is that now these children are West Virginia's children and not your children. And while they don't bear physical scars, it is exactly right what said and the state said, that they will bear the psychological scars of what was done to them by you, Jeanne Whitefeather, and you, Donald Lantz, for the rest of their lives. You brought these children to West Virginia, a place that I know is almost heaven, and you put them in hell. This court will now put you in yours. And may God have mercy on your souls, because this court will not. Please stand.
You know, this case pisses me off. I know I say this about a lot of cases I cover on this channel, but this takes it too far. These two couples kept their 5 adopted black children as slaves, working on their farm. I mean, this is the most difficult story for me to report on. I can't imagine how it was for these kids to have to endure this for weeks and months and years. Backstory so we are all on the same page. The couple, Jeanne K. Whitefeather, age 63, and her husband, Donald Lantz, 64, adopted 5 black siblings from a shelter for homeless and vulnerable youths. The couple were living in Minnesota at the time and moved the children to Washington State in 2018 and then to West Virginia in 2023. In October 2023, the couple were arrested at their home after a neighbor spotted the husband locking the couple's 2 oldest children into the barn and then leaving. That made the neighbor concerned, and this wonderful neighbor did the right thing and called the police. Deputies responded to the neighbor's call, and when they arrived, they had to use a sledgehammer to break into the barn, where they found a 6-year-old girl and a 4-year-old boy reeking of body odor, with sores on their feet, and just in a mess. According to the kids, they slept on concrete floors with no bedding and shared a bucket as a toilet. Inside their house, in the loft, there was an old girl crying, also not in a livable condition. The fourth kid arrived at the scene with the husband, and he, the husband, led the deputies to a friend's home where the fifth child was staying. And according to the kids found in the barn, they had been locked inside there for about 12 hours before they were found. The other sick part is that these kids were a money-making machine for the couple. Because after reviewing the couple's bank statements, the analysts who reviewed them testified that the couple received over $318,000 in child assistance from the state of Minnesota alone. No idea how much was pocketed from Washington State or West Virginia, the other places they lived. Yet those kids testify that they lived on a diet of peanut butter sandwiches, and the so-called parents had them use a piece of cardboard as a pillow. And Donald, the so-called good father, would often use racial taunts on them. One of the victims stated that she went about 2 months without showering or brushing her teeth. And according to the kids, they were not in school. They were always home all day. When they weren't locked in the barn, the oldest daughter testified that they spent their days gardening, carrying supplies, gathering water from the creek, attending to animals, and digging holes for trees. I guess the evil parents were trying to be good people in other areas by being environmental friendly. They focus on offsetting their carbon footprint. Heck, shame on them for not planting the emotional stability these children actually needed to offset their traumas. Pisses me off. So according to the victims, in the final months, after the neighbors noticed them doing hard labor, they spent their final months with a couple locked inside the home. I mean, I just can't imagine the horror they had to endure. On the brighter side of this story, Jeanne K. Whitefeather was sentenced to 215 years in prison, and her husband, Donald Lantz, was sentenced to 160 years. The couple were ordered to pay $280,000 in restitution apiece to the victims. I mean, even with this long sentence, the irony is that this evil couple will live a much better life in prison than those kids ever did under their control. They'll have a warm, comfortable jail cell, not cold, and with a toilet. And for sure, they won't miss any meals like these kids did. The oldest child told Whitefeather and Lantz in an impact statement that they were, and I quote, monsters. Another child said, and I quote, "I will be something amazing. I will be strong and beautiful. You'll always be exactly what you are. Horrible," end quote. The youngest child said they were, and I quote, taught to laugh at their siblings and had to watch a lot of their. He continues, "Now at my new home, I see that everything was not right with Jeanne and Donald," the child's impact statement says. I mean, this is insane, and kudos to the judge for sentencing these so-called parents to the highest prison sentence allowed by the law. And just looking at them and how nonchalant they are about this issue, with their lies and apologies that do not seem sincere, I really don't see them surviving prison. Because prison justice will not really be merciful for them based on the nature of their case, right? And to the foster and adoptive agencies, please get your stuff together. This is not the first of these kind of cases we are all seeing. These cases happen all the time, as unfortunate as it is. These kids come from lots of traumas already, and to be handed over to the hands of monsters like this is diabolical. I'm just very glad that justice was served for these kids, and prayers for strength for all that they had to endure at such a tender age. And until next time, please be kind.